The scalding coffee soaked right through my apron and burned my skin. I flinched. The ceramic mug shattered against the checkered diner floor. Sitting right in front of me at the corner table was my father. He flanked himself with 3 executives in custom suits. They stared at me like I was an insect. My father reached into his leather wallet. He pulled out a crisp $5 bill and dropped it directly into the steaming puddle of coffee at my feet. "Pick it up," he said. His voice bounced off the greasy walls. "That is your worth. Learn your place." The entire diner went dead silent. The clinking forks stopped. The grill cook froze. Everyone watched the disgraced daughter of a corporate tycoon standing in a puddle of cheap roast. My hands shook. My chest tightened until my ribs ached. He wanted me to break. He wanted me to crawl. He had spent the last 2 years calling every architecture firm in the city, blacklisting me, branding me a thief over a fabricated $5,000 family debt just to force me into submission. He wanted to prove that without his name, I was nothing but a waitress. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stared at the floor. He smiled, thinking he had won. He thought my silence was surrender. He did not know that right at that exact second, the phone in my apron pocket was vibrating. I reached down. I grabbed the soggy $5 bill. I wiped the coffee off the president's polished shoe. Then I walked to the back room, pulled out my phone, and opened the email I had been waiting for all morning. "Congratulations. Lin Tong, you have been officially selected as the lead project director for the $300 million Harborview Tower development." I locked myself in the employee bathroom and gripped the sink. My reflection stared back at me. Stained apron, messy hair, exhausted eyes. But my shoulders straightened. The game was over. The hunted was about to become the hunter. That night, my sister Lin Yu posted a photo on her social media. She stood in front of a massive presentation board, holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Celebrating my new flagship design, securing the Harborview bid for the family firm." My blood turned to ice. I zoomed in on the blueprint in the background. It was not her design. It was a masterpiece of cascading light wells and structural elegance. It belonged to Shu Qin. Our late grandmother, my father had raided a dead woman's archives, slapped his favorite daughter's name on her genius, and submitted it to the city to win the biggest contract of the decade. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the central bank. I bypassed the tellers and headed straight down into the vault. Box 1247. My grandmother had left me a single brass key before she passed. I turned the lock. The metal door clicked open. Inside sat a heavy, dust-covered cylinder. I pulled out the rolled sheets. They were the original microfilms of those exact blueprints. Stamped, sealed, and dated 1990 by the Federal Copyright Office. My grandmother knew her son was a parasite. She had spent decades preparing a trap from beyond the grave. Now, I held the trigger. Monday morning arrived. I traded my grease-stained apron for a tailored charcoal suit. I walked into the peak floors of the Meridian Corporation Tower. The Harborview Tower bid files sat perfectly aligned on my massive mahogany desk. Right on top was my father's submission. I did not waste time looking for hidden clues. I picked up my office phone and dialed the private numbers of the 3 billionaire executives who had laughed at me in the diner. They answered with arrogant drawls, expecting a secretary. Their tone shifted the second I introduced myself as the lead director, reviewing their municipal contracts. I called them into my office. When they sat across from me, they looked at the floor. Meridian is auditing all subcontractors. I told them, my voice held zero warmth. Hand over the proof of Lin Jian's extortion. and I ensure your firms are not penalized for complicity in his federal bid rigging. Billionaires do not act out of charity. They act out of self-preservation. One executive scoffed, but his nervous compliance officer quickly slid a sleek silver flash drive across my desk. They handed over their internal server logs, audio recordings of my father threatening to ruin them, and emails explicitly detailing his smear campaign against me. They gave him up instantly to save their own company stocks. My father's toxic arrogance had turned his strongest allies into my greatest weapons. Word leaked that Lawson & Partners might lose the bid. My father lost his mind. He dug up an old VIP visitor badge to bypass the lobby turnstiles and stormed the 51st floor. When the security guards physically blocked him at the heavy oak boardroom doors, I hit the intercom button on my desk, let him in. I instructed the guards, let him dig his own grave. The doors swung open. My father marched in, flanked by his legal team, chest puffed out, ready to scream at the executives. Then he saw me. I sat at the absolute head of the table. His jaw dropped. The color completely drained from his face. "What are you doing in that chair?" he snarled, trying to regain control. "You think bribing your way into a secretary job gives you the right to block my company?" I did not answer him. I did not explain my title. I just pressed one button on the remote in my hand. The massive LED wall behind me flared to life. On the left side of the screen was his new multi-million-dollar bid submission, proudly labeled with my sister's name. On the right side was the original blueprint. The federal copyright stamp from 1990 glowed brightly in the center. Bearing my grandmother's signature, the boardroom erupted in horrified whispers. Every single executive, investor, and city official stared at my father. He was exposed. A fraud. A thief attempting to sell stolen intellectual property to the municipal government. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His hands trembled. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a pathetic, stuttering sound came out. The men he had tried to impress looked at him with absolute, unfiltered disgust, but a cornered animal is the most dangerous. My father vanished from the boardroom, only to strike back 2 weeks later. It was the exact day I was scheduled to sign the paperwork for the $5 million trust fund my grandmother left me. I walked into the Meridian lobby and found my father waiting. He was not alone. He brought a sleazy probate lawyer and a stack of court documents. He waved an ex parte emergency injunction in my face. It was a court order freezing every penny of the trust. He and my sister had filed a police report accusing me of elder abuse. They claimed I manipulated my grandmother when she was mentally unfit. "You thought you could outsmart me," he hissed. His breath smelled like stale coffee and desperation. "That money will be tied up in litigation for 10 years. You will starve before you see a single dime of it." I looked at the sleazy lawyer. I pulled a sleek tablet from my briefcase and tapped the screen. A high-definition video started playing. It was a board-certified psychiatrist, stating his name and credentials. Sitting next to my grandmother, the timestamp perfectly matched the exact date and hour the trust was signed. The doctor explicitly declared her to be in a state of total, unassailable mental competence. The sleazy lawyer took one look at the medical affidavit on the screen. He shoved his documents back into his briefcase. "You did not tell me there was a psychiatric evaluation." He snapped at my father. "I am dropping this case." He turned and sprinted toward the revolving doors. My father stood, frozen. The panic in his eyes was intoxicating. But the final blow was not going to come from me. The elevator bell chimed. The polished steel doors slid open. My mother stepped out. Chang Min had been silent for 30 years. She was the obedient housewife, the woman who looked down at her plate while her husband verbally abused her children. But the night before, I had gone to her house I showed her the forged police report. I showed her that the man she had served for 3 decades was willing to send his own flesh and blood to a concrete prison cell just to control a bank account. That broke her final thread of loyalty. She walked across the marble lobby. The echoing click of her heels sounded like a ticking clock. My father's eyes twitched. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "Get back to the house." My mother stopped inches from his face. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a thick, yellow document. It was the original poison pill clause from the firm's founding articles of incorporation. Signed by my grandmother. "You forgot who founded your empire." My mother said, her voice was quiet, but every word hit like a hammer. Shu Chin gave me the silent voting proxy before she died. Any verified intellectual property theft against a legitimate heir immediately dilutes your equity. Your shares are gone. Your voting rights are gone. You own absolutely nothing. She threw the document directly at his chest. It scattered across the lobby floor. My father collapsed to his knees. He gasped for air. He gripped his chest, hyperventilating, staring at the scattered papers as if they were venomous snakes. The man who had demanded I pick up a wet $5 bill was now crawling on the marble floor, completely destroyed by the woman he had treated like furniture. The cleanup was clinical. I fulfilled my fiduciary duty to the city. I forwarded his fraudulent, stolen municipal bid to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the State Attorney General. Submitting stolen property for a tax-subsidized project is federal wire fraud. He was indicted 3 days later. The state permanently revoked his architectural license. My sister, terrified of perjury charges, accepted a plea deal and tearfully apologized on local television to avoid jail time. My mother used the trust fund to buy a high-rise luxury condo overlooking the ocean. She drinks her morning tea in total, undisturbed silence. She is finally breathing. A few months later, I received a letter postmarked from a minimum security federal facility. The handwriting was my father's. It was 5 pages of frantic guilt tripping. He wrote about family loyalty. He wrote about how everything he did was to make me tougher. He wrote that he was still my father and demanded I put money in his commissary account. I stood in my kitchen. The morning sun warmed the hardwood floors. I looked at the pages. I did not feel a spike of adrenaline. I did not feel a sudden urge to cry. I just felt nothing. A profound, hollow nothing. I dropped the letter into the paper shredder. The machine whirred. The lies turned to confetti. I poured myself a cup of premium roast coffee. I walked out onto the balcony of my own home. I leaned against the railing and looked out at the skyline. Far in the distance, the glass exterior of Harborview Tower caught the sunlight. I built that. No one can ever take it away. When you spend your entire life surviving a narcissistic parent, your baseline reality is warped. You are conditioned to believe that love is transactional. You are trained to believe that setting a boundary is an act of violence. My father did not torture me because he hated me. That is the hardest truth to swallow. He tortured me because he was terrified of me. He used that $5,000 debt as a leash because he knew he lacked the talent to build a legacy on his own. He needed me small so he could feel big. He needed me broken so he could play the savior. Through the fire and the absolute wreckage of my bloodline, I forged 3 unbreakable rules for survival. Rule number 1, silence is the sharpest weapon you can ever hand your enemy. Look at my mother. 30 years of keeping the peace, 30 years of swallowing her own dignity to keep a toxic family intact. Her silence did not protect anyone. It only fed the monster. It gave him permission to escalate. Do not ever confuse submission with peace. When you stay quiet about your own abuse, you are writing the villain a blank check. My mother only started living the exact second she decided to open her mouth and fight back. Rule number 2, never retaliate with your emotions. Retaliate with paperwork. Narcissists thrive in the chaos of a screaming match. They want you to cry. They want you to throw things. They want you to look crazy so they can point the finger and say, "Look at her. She is unstable." If I had thrown that hot coffee in his face at the diner, I would have played right into his trap. Instead, I swallowed my pride. I gathered audio files. I gathered server logs. I gathered federal copyright stamps. You cannot gaslight a government timestamp. You cannot manipulate a federal indictment. When they attack your feelings, you attack their infrastructure. Rule number 3, blood does not make you family. Respect does. Loyalty does. Boundaries do. We are fed this toxic cultural lie that we owe our parents our souls just because they gave us biology. You do not owe anyone your sanity. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you. Even if you share a last name, the people who truly love you will never demand that you shrink yourself to make them comfortable. The family I have now, the mentors who elevated me, the mother who finally stood up for me, they are my chosen bloodline. Right now, somebody watching this is sitting at their own version of that greasy diner table. You are looking down at a $5 bill and a puddle of coffee. You have a boss, a partner, or a parent who is constantly testing your limits, waiting to see how low you are willing to bend. You are terrified that if you stand up, you will lose everything. You need to listen to me very carefully. The door you think is locked is only closed. The keys are already in your hand. Stop waiting for the villain to suddenly grow a conscience. Stop shrinking yourself to fit into a room that was designed to suffocate you. Stop picking up their scraps. Let them call you difficult. Let them call you ungrateful. Let them throw their tantrums. You step over the mess. You walk out the door. And you start building your own empire. If this story hit a nerve today, if you recognize the face of your own manipulator in these words, leave a comment below. Share this with someone who is currently trapped in the fog of toxic guilt. Hit subscribe and join a community of people who refuse to be victims anymore. You survived the storm. Now it is time to command the lightning. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did Lin Tong endure 2 years of being treated like garbage? Why did her mother stay silent for 30 years? Why not just walk away the first time he dropped that $5 bill in the coffee? Let me explain something about toxic dynamics. They do not hook you with constant cruelty. They hook you with the slot machine effect. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement. You put in your coins, your loyalty, your hard work, your silence, and most of the time, you get absolutely nothing. But every once in a while, the machine pays out a tiny crumb of hope, a rare compliment from a controlling parent, a brief moment of peace at a family dinner. You become addicted to waiting for that payout, convinced that if you just pull the lever one more time, they will finally treat you right. Lin Tong and her mother were not weak. They were caught in a rigged casino, hoping the house would eventually play fair. But here is where this story pivots from a tragedy into a masterclass in financial and emotional self-defense. Let us break down the specific smart moves Lin Tong made. First, building the case. When you are dealing with a manipulator, promises and arguments mean absolutely nothing. Lin Tong did not scream at her father in that diner. Instead, she went straight to the bank vault and retrieved federal copyright microfilms from 1990. She traded emotional reactions for hard, unarguable data. You cannot gaslight a government timestamp. If you are in a toxic workplace or a messy family dispute, you must document everything. Second, the audit strategy. Look at how she handled those 3 billionaire executives at Meridian. She did not beg for their help or try to appeal to their morals. She leveraged her position to audit their compliance. Scammers and bullies absolutely hate details and audits. By shining a massive legal spotlight on their liability, she forced them to hand over the server logs and audio recordings. Third, the buyout. When her mother dropped that corporate poison pill clause to strip his shares, that was the ultimate investment in her own freedom. Sometimes walking away means severing financial ties, but you have to view that loss as the price of admission to your new life. Using the trust fund to secure a new home was her buyout from 30 years of misery. Here is the verdict. Your worth is not defined by the people who profit from keeping you small. Blood might give someone a front row seat to your life, but bad behavior means you are fully authorized to revoke their ticket. The moment you start treating your peace of mind like a high-value asset, the manipulators will panic. If you have ever had to execute a strategic exit from a toxic environment, I want to hear from you. What was your breaking point? Drop your story in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more street smart life strategies. And remember, you are your greatest investment.